So price controls are a simple application of supply and demand, although it's probably the first time that we really see why this is such a useful model, even though we're not going to do anything too complicated with it. So we're going to have the government implement a price control, in particular a price ceiling at first. And what a price ceiling is a maximum price, so you're not allowing the price to go above the ceiling. So it wants to go to equilibrium here, but the ceiling is going to stop it, and this is now going to be the new price. So we want to see what the effect of that is going to be. So this is what is going to cause a shortage, because at this price, the quantity demanded at that price is out here. The quantity supplied, I didn't label it with lines, but the quantity demanded being greater than quantity supplied, that's the definition of a shortage. So at this particular price, we have a shortage equal to this distance. Keep in mind that's the only thing that creates a shortage. So if it was just that we had less of this good to go around, that might be, say, a supply shift. So let's say something destroys whatever this good is. If all that did was decrease supply, but we allowed the price to adjust, you might get a higher price because of that, but that wouldn't be a shortage if we allowed the market to clear. It's just that the market would be smaller in terms of quantity and at a higher price. So what creates that shortage is not allowing this market to adjust. So at this price, quantity demanded being greater than quantity supplied. You can put a price ceiling anywhere, but if you put a ceiling up here, remember it being a maximum price, the price would not be allowed to go above it. Well, the equilibrium price would be here anyway, so if a price ceiling is up here, it wouldn't have any effect. It's what we call a non-binding price control. So this would be a binding price ceiling. It has an effect on this market. So for a price ceiling to be binding, it has to be below equilibrium. And we can see what other effects it has here. So first thing we need to realize is that this smaller quantity supplied compared to quantity demanded, this is the quantity that determines the size of the market. So this smaller amount provides the constraint between quantity demanded and quantity supplied. So it doesn't matter how many people want to buy this thing, there's only this much for sale. So at this lower price, fewer people want to sell this good, and so that determines now the size of this market. So we shrink this market, we've lost transactions, and that's what's going to cause this deadweight loss. So we have inefficiently low quantity of transactions because these were mutually beneficial transactions that were taking place before. People were willing to pay more than what sellers were willing to produce it for, and so this was surplus being created, partly consumer, partly producer surplus, and now we've lost that surplus. So that's why we have deadweight loss here. And the standard assumption to make when doing price controls like this is really like the best case scenario of the price control. So this, we're just showing one particular source of inefficiency, this deadweight loss as a result of lost transactions. To label the rest of this graph the way we did, we made another assumption, which is there are now only Q2 units available of this good. Someone's got to get those Q2 units. Normally the price would ration this good, and that's what got us to equilibrium. At that price, anyone who wants to buy this good is able to buy it. Anyone who wants to sell this good is able to sell it. That's no longer true in the case of the price control. Now these goods have to get rationed somehow. Someone's going to get these Q2 units, and actually this many people would like to buy this thing, so they have to get rationed somehow. Now we're going to make the unrealistic assumption that the people with the highest willingness to pay, which is this part of the demand curve, are the ones who actually get the good. And so you get some people who luck out here. So because they're going to have this willingness to pay, and they're going to end up paying this price control price, this price ceiling here. So our consumer surplus, we're going to assume, ends up being this area A and C. So before they were A and B, A and C. So you could have some consumers in this particular scenario that benefit from this price control. Producers are clearly worse off because they did have CDE before, and now they're producing less and getting this lower price, and so they're left with this area E. So we make that assumption really just to make the graph easier, but like I said, that's that's really the best case scenario and an unrealistic scenario of how good this price control is going to be, because in reality you're really not going to have this particular allocation where the people with the highest willingness to pay are the ones who get it. So in reality, another source of inefficiency is going to be an inefficient allocation among consumers, because it's quite possible that someone with a lower willingness to pay, perhaps one of the people with willingness to pay over here, or even people down here, because remember, at this price, even if I had this willingness to pay, I'm still willing to buy it. I wouldn't have bought it back when there was no price control because the price would have risen to P1. But now I could be among the consumers that ends up getting this good, and that would be an inefficient allocation. It would be efficient to allocate this good among the people with the highest willingness to pay, even with the price control price. So inefficient allocation is another source of inefficiency. A couple of other things that are going to happen here is, because we're not allowing this price to rise, you're going to get other non-price adjustments happening. In particular, think about the example of a rent control. So that would be an example of a price ceiling, assuming it's binding, where we're not going to allow the rent to rise to P1. We're going to only allow it to be at PC here, this price control price, this price ceiling. So if we're not allowing the price to adjust, then landlords have no incentive to make efficient improvements to their buildings, to this resource. So you're going to get inefficiently low quality goods here. In other words, run down apartments, because if landlords can't get that market price of P1, then I have no incentive to maintain a quality that would justify this price of P1. So if I can only get PC, well, I'm going to let the quality of this good erode to get it closer to a value of PC. So you're going to get a price quality trade-off that people otherwise wouldn't have wanted. People would be willing to pay a higher rent as long as you make those improvements, but because we're putting this price control on, we're not allowing that particular trade-off to happen, that efficient trade-off between price and quality to happen. So we get inefficiently low quality good. The other major source of inefficiency, which again is not showed on this graph, is going to be the wasted time or other resources spent dealing with this shortage. So it could be that it takes a lot longer to now find an apartment. That is another source of inefficiency, or wasting a resource, in that case time. So time is often the wasted resource that is missing from our graphical analysis here. So again, we're only showing this particular deadweight loss, and so, but that's the standard way of doing a price control. But that's the sort of best case scenario for the inefficiency of this price control.